for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News, bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. And joining us are Riyadh Al Samurai of the Daily Mail, Paul McInnes of the Guardian. Welcome along to you both. We'll hear from you shortly, but let's quickly run you through the back pages as we have them. Starting off with this: Blues have vowel factor, says the Daily Express, as teenager Esteval lights up Stamford Bridge in victory over Barcelona. Yes, 3-0 it finished at the bridge. Esteval is the Daily Mirror's take. Brazil team hits stunning solo goals, Blues for Barca. Elsewhere, Arne Slot says he feels guilty about Liverpool's dramatic slump in form. It's good that all of the papers have chosen their own sort of pun here. Teen Supreme, Esteval upstages Lamine in statement win for Maresca. Elsewhere, Sandin's flop is their take on Man City's defeat to Bayer Leverkusen after Pep Guardiola makes 10 changes. Away from the action on the field, two big World Cup stories also make interesting reading. We discussed this from The Times. Cristiano Ronaldo clear to start the World Cup after FIFA suspends 2 games of his ban, the other having been already completed. And why tennis style seeding may stop England meeting France until the final at the World Cup, and indeed Spain and Argentina until the semi-finals. All right, well, let's start off with tonight's Champions League action. Of course, a statement win and performance from Chelsea, beating Barcelona by 3-0. And it was all about one man's particular efforts, and that's Esteval. Riyadh, let me come to you first on this. I mean, first of all, what did you make of the goal?
He's outstanding, isn't he? There's, I think a few people have pointed out how similar it was to the one he scored for Palmeiras against Chelsea in the Club World Cup. I think watching that goal, what sort of never ceases to amaze me with him is that's his weaker foot. That's his right foot. He shouldn't be able to leather the thing that hard, that kind of angle, that kind of finish. He's gifted. This is something where sort of our colleagues who cover Chelsea regularly have been raving. I've seen him play a couple of times this season. I've seen a few of the highlights, but that was really the performance. That was the sort of coming out moment of here he is. We had the kind of whole build up for this game about the sort of the battle of the 18-year-old wonder kids with sort of Lamine Yamal. He was completely anonymous. I wouldn't necessarily single him out for that. Barcelona were dreadful. Obviously, it doesn't help playing with 10 men for so much of the match. But Esteval, he's a fantastic player. Kind of going to that two-footed element. There are slight elements of Cazorla about it almost. He's probably the most two-footed player I've ever seen. I wouldn't say he's quite there yet. But we talk about the comparisons that are being made for Esteval already. He doesn't like being compared to Lionel Messi. He's probably going to have to get used to it over time. I think the more accurate one for me at the moment is Eden Hazard. He just reminds me of him. It's that speed, it's that acceleration, the close control. He's deceptively strong for someone of his size. It's very hard to just go and shunt him off the ball, but he's an absolute joy to watch, isn't he? When he gets it, you just have that instinct to creep a little bit further forward in your seat. He's going to do something special, and that performance tonight, even aside from the goal, there's just something beautiful about watching a guy get the ball and want to beat his man, and not just beat him, absolutely eviscerate him. He's so exciting to watch. I think we'll probably talk more broadly about where Chelsea stand at the moment in a moment this season, but for now, on the evening, that was all about him. I thought he was fabulous. I just want to watch him play again, to be honest.
Yeah, well, I mean, won't be long. Got plenty of games live on Sky Sports. I'm sure you'll be able to see Esteval in action, Riyadh. Paul, on him, I just wonder how you feel about the way that Chelsea have handled him. Because you've got a precocious teenager. He's just 18 years of age. And right now, he's really starting to find form and delivering with those goals. He scored twice for Brazil over the international break as well. So just, maybe a word to how they've managed the situation with Esteval.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've managed it well. At the same time, you could flip it around and say, we're not even into December yet. And this 18-year-old is making his mark on both the Premier League and the Champions League. It's not taken him a very long time to adapt or to stake his claim for a place in the first team. But I think you're right to say that Chelsea have deliberately thought about this. They've kept him out of the firing line to a certain extent, and it's consistent with Chelsea's general practice. And I think what you saw today is perhaps an example of what the Chelsea plan is and where Chelsea want to go. This was a team where both the wide men were permed. The customary right winger Neto went number 9 for the first half, switched around the midfield, different centre half combinations, and everybody looked like they knew what they were doing. Everybody looked comfortable in their role, comfortable in the formation, comfortable in the style. Another thing I really enjoyed watching about Esteval tonight was just how committed he was to the press. He was harrying defenders consistently and never let up. And those are the characteristics of this team. And you get the sense that actually what looked like something that is too big, maybe doesn't have too many key figures that you can hang a team on, suddenly looks like a project, a squad-based project, and one that is built to compete in as many competitions as can be thrown at them.
It's 5 wins in 6 in all competitions, Riyadh, for Chelsea, and they've won their last 3 without conceding a goal and scoring 8. We've got Esteval on fire. I mean, this really sets things up for the game coming up on Sunday, which is, of course, the visit of Arsenal in the Premier League, second against first. I mean, this was a statement win, and it sets up that game beautifully, doesn't it?
Chelsea are in a great moment. I think I've had a lot of reservations. I'm sure many of us have over the current regime. The sort of turnover and churn of players is enormous. They operate a huge squad, and I've still got a lot of reservations about how functional that kind of approach is. And if we were just to apply a slight note of caution at the moment, we have seen Chelsea be quite inconsistent this season. We know it's a young squad, and that can be characteristic of it. You know, I don't think anyone would have necessarily been pleased with a draw in Karabag, but then you see a performance like tonight, and you see how high the ceiling is. They're second in the league. We're talking about a division at the moment where Liverpool are in this crazy funk. Man City, every sort of couple of steps forward they take at the moment, there seems to be one coming back the other way. So, you know, there is a sort of open landscape for them to be able to make a real imprint on it. I don't know whether this is going to carry on all the way through to May. Arsenal have clearly been the standard setters. I think this game against them at the weekend, that's going to be a huge barometer really of where both teams are. But at the moment, if you're Enzo Maresca, even if you're Chelsea as a whole, for all the kind of criticisms I've just inferred there, you've got to be very satisfied with the way this is looking, and you know, they're moving quite comfortably through the Champions League. They're the 5th now in the standings. They're probably going to make it to the last 16 automatically, I should have imagined at this stage. So, you know, at the moment it's flying, and as we've just spent 5 minutes talking about Esteval, they've got arguably the most exciting young player in the league at the moment. So no, it's really encouraging. But let's see what happens at the weekend, and then we can probably draw a more accurate picture of where they stand domestically.
4 p.m. Our coverage starts on Sky Sports Premier League for Chelsea against Arsenal. You mentioned Manchester City, Riyadh. I'll send this one your way, Paul. Back page of the Star. Beaten Pep a stinker man. Obviously, pun on Tinker Man, because he made 10 changes for the visit of Bayer Leverkusen. A misjudgment, Paul, as they lost by 2-0.
Well, it wouldn't be the first time that Pep Guardiola has overthought a European fixture, I guess. But yeah, I mean, it's just interesting, isn't it? You know, Pep's the guy who made it. I think the phrase in fantasy football is Pep roulette, and that you can never be sure which players might turn up for his team. And he kind of made that squad game the benchmark in the Premier League, and it was successful. But I think what's happening right now is that you've got a number of a substantial amount of recruitment over the past 2 windows. not all of these players have bedded in. And tonight, you saw the players who really aren't getting many minutes in the team that we've barely seen. Omar Marmoush this season, haven't seen much of Savinho, and they both started. And so, it was a bit of an ask to expect them all to click. I think there was a slight tweak in formation as well, away from the two number 10s that they've been playing in the Premier League. So, of course, no Haaland in your starting team changes things a lot. So there were a lot of hurdles to clear in order to click, and they just didn't get there. They were insipid. They were insipid in both halves, and which was particularly surprising when after they went down, they didn't really show much much appetite really, but certainly not much in the way of an idea of how to get back into the game. And that was after a series of more regular players was introduced for substitutions. So it was a bit of a disappointing performance, disappointing result, and a bit of a reminder that you can't really send the reserves out in the Champions League and expect to win. On the other hand, City, in this league format, you can afford to throw the odd fixture. City have Madrid away. I'm pretty sure they'll play the first team for that. Then Bodo Glimt away and Galatasaray at home in their remaining fixtures. So they're still well placed to qualify in the top 8. But yeah, suddenly there'll be more question marks on whether City have turned the corner, how legitimate their title challenge will be, particularly on the back of defeat at the weekend.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Paul. I think, it's with the extra couple of games in the league phase, you can probably judge by this point where you are and work out whether you can field a slightly weakened team or, a much changed team, and maybe if you receive a defeat, well, that's not the end of the world. I see what you're saying there. But ultimately, Riyadh, briefly, it's been a difficult week, hasn't it, for Pep Guardiola, given what happened at the end of the game at St James's Park. I mean, this won't have improved his mood, will it?
I just look, it's a relief for cameramen everywhere that he's, he sort of calmed down a little bit. But I think almost going to what sort of Paul was discussing there about the sort of, the changes. We're still talking about a starting 11 that cost over 350 million quid. You're still talking about a bench that cost 400 million. I think against what Paul was saying, it's about that lack of cohesion. It's the unfamiliarity, the chopping and the changing. But they were really poor tonight. I'd go as far as saying I didn't think there was much fight from them. I thought from what I could hear on the TV, it sounded like the atmosphere was pretty flat there. I don't know whether they expected to turn up and be able to win, but I think it just goes to prove with City in the last season and a bit now, I just find it very hard to trust them, and that's not something we're historically used to saying with a Guardiola side, and even with a much changed side like tonight, you would still be able to back them to turn up and to be able to produce a performance, to be able to find quality. Watching them tonight, they almost lacked imagination going forward. And you look at the quality of players that they still had on the pitch, and that's on the one hand it's surprising. On the other hand, it is becoming a little bit more familiar. They're in another one of those little spots, and they're going to have to turn that around. Real Madrid, I think, is looking like a huge game. So, we still instinctively have this feeling with City. Well, they're only ever one passage of play away from everything just clicking back into place, but we're not seeing that, and they've had some fairly abject moments this season as well as what we saw last season. So no, it's a really strange one, that.
Yeah, a couple of difficult results there for Pep Guardiola. Okay, we'll take a break for a couple of minutes. When we come back, we'll take a look at more of the sports stories in the morning's papers, including this in The Guardian, why Cristiano Ronaldo will be free to play in the World Cup group stage despite that red card against the Republic of Ireland. You're watching Back Pages tonight. Welcome back to you at home. Welcome back to Real Samurai of the Daily Mail, Paul McInnes of The Guardian. We've talked about Chelsea's win and City's defeat. Let's talk about Newcastle, who went to Marseille, took the lead, but ended up on the losing side. So this, from the Telegraph, Newcastle's troubles on the road continue as they self-destruct in damaging Marseille defeat. Paul, I mean, it is self-destruct. They've taken the lead through Harvey Barnes, who is playing brilliantly at the moment. But of all people, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang rolling back the years.
I mean, yeah, absolutely rolling back the years. He scored 2 cracking goals. The first one, both came in about 5-minute period after half-time. Newcastle had the better of the first half. Harvey Barnes' goal was calm, hit it across the keeper, nice finish. But Marseille were going to come back harder. The crowd was really up for it in the Velodrome. It was a really good atmosphere. They came out hard in the second half, and it was one through ball punched through the back line, and Nick Pope sort of dashed 30 yards out from his goal to try and intercept it. It was a crazy decision, but and Aubameyang was tearing at it. He got there, took the ball wide, drove it home from about from the touchline from about 25 yards out. It was a great, really nice, precise finish. The crowd went crazy, and then 5 minutes later, an even better first time finish from a low cross on the right, coming in at the near post. Pope's coming out to try and smother it. First time, drives it over the keeper into the roof of the net. Really sort of that I think it was a one season of wonder we got from him at Arsenal. It was a reminder of that, really. So this was good European football. Actually, it was great to see a kind of giant European club having a moment. The celebrations in the final whistle were huge. They're sort of Marseille are trying to cling on to a spot in the playoff section. Newcastle just about clinging on to a point in the immediate qualification. But in the end, it's going to be very disappointing for Newcastle because Eddie Howard's spoken a lot about how he was going to approach this game, what he'd been thinking about, how they were going to have to change things. He went to a 5 at the back, looked to sort of nullify some of Marseille's attacking strengths, and for a time it worked. But then they were hit on it wasn't quite a sucker punch, but they were hit when they weren't expecting it, and they couldn't recover from it. Nick Waltemada came off the bench. They had the other attacking options on, but never quite click. Series of half chances, and never quite got it over the line. So, bit of a chastening result for Newcastle, and still only away win since April was at Union Saint-Gilloise early in the Champions League.
Yeah. I mean, they had lost to Barcelona before, but otherwise it started strongly in the Champions League. So 2 defeats, 1 win for the English sides involved in Europe's top club competition. Let's switch tack and talk about the draw for the World Cup finals, which takes place on the 5th of December. And we now know, Riyadh, that England won't play Spain or Argentina to the semis, and they won't play France until the final. What do we make of this tennis-style seeding then?
Look, I think in essence, you've still got to win your group, don't you? It feels to me like another one of those subtle manoeuvres to ensure the big name teams go deep in the tournament. But that might just be my cynical mind in overdrive there. But look, if you're England, you're looking at it as there's potential. You don't have to meet Spain or Argentina until the semi-final. France in the final. Again, that's very much the optimistic take, but you've still got to win the group for that to come into force. So there's a lot that sort of stands in their way prior to that. We'll see what the draw chucks out for them on the 5th, I think it is. So it's interesting them pivoting to this tennis style approach. They tried it with the Club World Cup as well, but again, there is that slight sort of cynical alarm in my head about the motivations behind that.
Okay, Paul, what's your take? I mean, ultimately, it's nice to have those blockbuster games towards the end of the tournament. That's clearly, you want to build the momentum, but also equally, sometimes when you have that, that last group game or that, that last 16 tie, which is absolute, box office, it's a real attraction for the tournament too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I think it goes against the sort of the competitive ethos of the World Cup, which is about all the world's nations coming together to try and beat each other to find out who is the best. not kind of like being told, well, actually, there's 4 teams who are the best here, and as long as they do the things that are required of them, we want them in the semi-finals. That very much is the signal that's coming out from this news today. And, I think connoisseurs, and I'm sure, David, you would count yourself amongst this group, would say it's actually the quarterfinals traditionally where it's been at. Those are the games where you do get a couple of teams who maybe unexpected in the tournament, who've built up momentum over the course of the group stage, and into those early rounds, they go up against the big boys and they take them on, and unpredictable things can happen. That could still happen again next year. You can't rule it out, but it is a step away from that being able to happen, and a step to more predictable outcomes. And I did find it a bit remarkable in the FIFA release that surrounded this news, when they said they were making this change in order to ensure competitive balance. I mean, they've already got a seeding system for the groups, where the 3 hosts and the 9 highest placed teams in the FIFA rankings getting first pick in the groups. It seems to me to be it's ensuring a very particular type of competitive balance, and it isn't really one I like.
Yeah, I mean, we look at the last World Cup, amongst the quarterfinal ties, you mentioned quarterfinals there, Morocco beating Portugal to get through to the semis, and of course England losing to France, and that, incredibly intense game, which ultimately, cost England their place in the tournament. Okay, let's stay on the World Cup, but talk about a particular player who will now be free to play in all of the group matches, and that's this man here, pictured in the Oval Office alongside Donald Trump, Cristiano Ronaldo. So, 3-game ban for getting sent off against Ireland, but one of them he served against Armenia, and then the remaining 2, suspended for a year. So what do you make of this? I tell you what, Paul, I'm going to go to you for your take first.
Thanks. Yeah, I wrote the story that you're picturing there, and there's a kind of the fact that Cristiano Ronaldo was in the same room as the man who is doing his very best to take personal control of this World Cup, I think is quite eyebrow raising. It makes you think. But it is within the FIFA disciplinary committee's discretion to be able to reduce what is customarily a 3-match ban to whatever they like. They've reduced it to 1. With two on probation. They can do that. And there was certainly some discussion after the sending off, particularly from the Portuguese side, that it wasn't that much contact. And also, I think it's 226 international matches that Cristiano played for Portugal before this, and it had never been sent off. And so, people saying it's out of character. Now, on the other hand, you could say, well, might have been minimal contact, but it was still contact, and whether it's out of character or not doesn't really matter. But I think people were trying to put some mitigation around. I mean, there is a world in which if Riyadh's cynical mind had been activated, you might look at this and say some similarities with the World Cup draw, that it's, what you're going to end up with is the sort of biggest, most marketable talents available when they're needed for the world's TV cameras. But I actually think, again, a bit like the expanded Champions League, we've now got a 48-team World Cup of 12 groups of 4. There's going to be some quite easy group stage games for some of the higher FIFA ranked sides, and that includes Portugal, who will be a first seed in the draw. So I think Portugal will not need Cristiano Ronaldo in their group stage games to get out of the
They didn't need him against Armenia, did they? They won that 9-1.
No, indeed. 9-1 is a handy little...
Sadly, we'll run out of time, guys. And listen, I'd love to come to you, Riyadh, but look, your face says it all. We kind of know what you think. Thank you so much, guys. Don't forget, the Back Page tonight, downloadable as a podcast. Back Pages, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your pods. Join us again Wednesday night. Martin Henry Winter are our guests.